It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. We're sharing with you some of our favorite Bullseye interviews of the past. First up, Geena Davis. When Geena Davis starred in Thelma and Louise, it looked like her breakthrough. Oscar nominations, huge box office, had to be the start of a trend, right? Finally, women could star in buddy movies. But it didn't work out that way. Same thing happened when she starred in A League of Their Own. Acclaim, box office smash, but no more female sports movies. When her first daughter was a young child, Davis started wondering how many women were in the kids' shows she was seeing. She started the Geena Davis Institute on Gender in Media to find out. The results of that first study were discouraging, and so were the results of the second. The Institute's been studying the sexism in entertainment for 14 years now. First at USC's Annenberg School of Communication, now at Mount St. Mary's University in LA. When we talked in 2016, the Institute had found representation increasing in film and TV, but if you've been paying attention to the news lately, you know that the call for inclusion has only gotten stronger. Anyway, here's my interview with Geena Davis. Geena Davis, it is great to have you on the show. Welcome to Bullseye.
Thank you so much.
Well, let's start by talking about the Institute, and we'll get into your career later. But you're clearly a person who goes into things whole hog,
right?
As evidenced by the fact that you once almost became an Olympic archer. But and we're definitely going to talk about that.
Okay.
But what led you into this work in such a sort of broad and deep way?
Well, it is a tendency of mine to go too far with everything, but I didn't intend to with this in the beginning. After I noticed how bereft of female presence kids' entertainment seemed to be, I just started asking people about it. I asked my friends, if they noticed that the movie that just came out had only one female character in it, after the mother dies gruesomely, of course, in the first 5 minutes, and none of them noticed. So I thought, well, I'm in the industry. I meet a bunch of people. I'll just ask people about it and see what the thinking is. And so if I had a meeting with a studio executive or producer or director or whatever, I'd say, have you ever noticed how few female characters there are in G and PG rated movies? And every single person I asked said, no, that's not true anymore. That's not a problem anymore. And they were very sincere about it and actually passionate about it. They weren't saying, no, it's not a big deal. They said, we care about that here. We work on it. We talk about it all the time. And they would name a movie with one female character as proof that gender inequality had been fixed. So this was very striking to me that the people creating this stuff had no idea how few female characters there were. So that's what made me think, maybe if I had the numbers, it would make a difference. And that started the whole thing.
I mean, it is something that I think, because of a combination of a sexist society and my own male privilege, it's easy for me not to think of. But if I think of the movies that my sons watch, I mean, like Toy Story is a beautiful, fantastic movie.
Absolutely.
Like a real, genuine 4-star movie. But it's like Bo Peep.
Keep going.
Like they added one or two more. There's Barbie. I don't think they added her till later. But anyway, it is kind of a terrifying thing. Was it something that you had thought about in your own work prior to having that realization about the stuff your daughter was watching?
Well, I was certainly aware that there were fewer really great parts for women. But I think anybody, if you ask them, are there fewer starring roles for women? I think your average moviegoer would say, well, yeah, it seems so. But certainly in the earlier days, I was getting a lot of really great parts, and my whole impression was things are getting better. And then, like you said, that thing happened with Thelma and Louise and League of Their Own, and I thought, oh, well, yeah, now everything's getting fixed, and it's all good. And it took me a while to realize, quite a while to realize that things weren't getting better, because part of it is you expect things to get better, but part of it is the press kept saying, now things are better. When there was a movie that struck it big, starring women. Like I remember when First Wives Club came out. Oh, this fixes everything now. 50-year-old women can lead movies and whatever. And you sort of buy it. So it took a while until I started seeing interviewers always wanted to know, are things getting better for women? And I'd say, well, it seems like it. It took me a while to say, I don't know. Google it, find out.
Were you usually answering interviews in like the voice of like a corn pone guy in overalls?
I know, that's a weird impression of myself, right? Kind of, oh, shucks, Ernest. Yeah, I think so.
One of the most interesting things about the studies that the Institute has done, and one that really took my breath away when I first heard about it when it came out a couple of years ago, was a study of the gender distribution in crowd scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me about that?
Well, it's bad in speaking characters. It's a really bad ratio. But in crowd scenes, particularly in animated movies, it's far worse than the speaking characters. In some animated movies, the crowd scenes are only 17% female characters, which is
what?
Absurd. It's like, what? I know. It's really inexplicable. So in fiction, especially stuff for kids, it's all invented, outer space colonies or underwater kingdoms or whatever, and the female population could be that low. I don't know how to explain it, except my theory is that Hollywood writers think women don't gather.
Well, I think what it really speaks to is that it is a fundamental structural issue, that it's not necessarily about malevolent actors.
Not at all.
And I don't mean actors as in actors doing acting, but people doing things. It's not about malevolent people.
Right.
It's about a fundamental problem where, even something as neutral as a crowd is so profoundly imbalanced.
Right. And I think it's attributable to unconscious bias, because when I had the numbers and I went back to the studios, I'd say, can I talk to everybody? And their jaws were on the ground. They were stunned. They had no idea, but wanted to change it. There's been so much change just as a result of the meetings that we take that it's really heartening. This is a good example of what you're talking about. When I was doing Stuart Little, there's a scene where there's a boat race with remote control boats. And I was watching as the assistant director was setting it up, and he'd choose a little boy and give him a remote and have him sit down on the edge of the water, and then choose a little girl behind each boy. And I saw what he was doing, and I just went over and casually said, hey, do you think we could give half of the remotes to girls? And he slapped his forehead, and I was like, oh, yes, of course, and switched it. It felt so stupid that he hadn't thought of it himself. But I promise you, nobody thinks of it themselves unless, it gets pointed out.
How does this touch your life? And we'll leave aside your working life for a minute. But how do you feel like it touches your home life? And I'm sure you have 3 kids.
Right.
I'm sure they watch film and television, some anyway.
Yeah.
So how do you think about responding to it as a parent?
Well, what I've done from the beginning, and I actually recommend this to folks who ask, is I watch with them whenever possible. When they were little, I always watched everything with them. And, I limit what they see, of course, but they see what other kids see generally. But I can be their, window into the unreality of what they're seeing. I can point out things that will mitigate that impact. So I'll say, hey, did you notice there's only one girl in that group? Why do you think that is? Or do you think girls could do what those boys are doing? Or why do you think she's wearing that if she's going to go rescue somebody? That seems inappropriate. So they are actually, they are pretty media savvy now, I have to say. They notice it themselves. They point it out to me all the time.
Do they get annoyed with you about it?
No, although there have been times when I start to lean over. My daughter's now 14, when I lean over to say something, and she says, I noticed, not enough girls. I saw that right away. So, they're very attuned to it.
So when once you and the scholars who work on these studies do the counting, what are the things that you then do with the numbers besides being kind enough to come talk to me on Bullseye here?
Right.
But what else are you doing with that information that you're gathering?
Well, the number one thing we do is meet with everyone who creates children's media. So we visit all the studios, all the networks, all the guilds, production companies, pretty much everybody. We try to saturate Hollywood, and we've been doing it a while now, so we visited most places many times and try to hit all their divisions. Like Disney, I can't even count how many times we've been over there. They have us back over and over and over. They have lots of divisions, of course. And they want us to talk to all of them. They are not at all skeptical. First of all, they believe in the research. And people who make kids media, I think, do feel a sense of obligation to make sure that it's good for kids. And they had no idea they were sending such a negative message to kids about the value of girls. So we've seen a lot of improvement already.
There's now 2 girl dogs on Paw Patrol. That's a 100% increase.
Wow.
That's breaking news from the parenting front lines, Geena Davis.
That's fabulous. Probably I had something to do with it, I have to guess.
Yeah, I mean, you went up to Canada and you gave those Paw Patrollers a taste of your mind.
That's right. That's exactly right.
A husky named Everest.
Right. But it's much more efficient to use the research that way instead of trying to educate the entire populace. It's efficient, and they don't feel threatened. I never bust anybody publicly or talk about a particular movie that didn't do a good job. So it's a great relationship.
Tell me why you've chosen that path. Why don't you bust people publicly or talk about particular shows that do a bad job, like Paw Patrol? Paw Patrol's a pretty good show.
They just made a nice improvement. We have to encourage modest improvements.
Good work, Paw Patrol.
Because I don't think in this case it would work that well. I was very aware that the Screen Actors Guild, the Directors Guild, the Writers Guild, they all publish the numbers every year. They have women's committees on in the Writers Guild and the Directors Guild and whatever. And the numbers never seem to move. In fact, the percentage of female characters in films has been exactly the same since 1946. So we're talking about 7 decades of stagnation, utter stagnation. So I felt that I had to try a different kind of approach. And plus, I want to keep working for these people. So, I keep a very friendly relationship with everybody.
This is Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. I'm talking to the actor Geena Davis. She's been an advocate for gender equality and representation in Hollywood, and she founded the Geena Davis Institute on Gender in Media. She also founded the Bentonville Film Festival, which promotes women and diverse voices in film. The festival takes place this week. I feel like I read a story about you showing up to work on Thelma and Louise and realizing that all of your notes about your character were like a setup based on how can I use being nice to convince Ridley Scott to change this.
Right.
Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. So we were going to have a meeting with just Susan and I and Ridley. I'd never met Susan yet. And just go over, do we have any thoughts or things we wanted to change or whatever. And I had planned out everything that I wanted to change by deciding how I would bring it up. So this one, I could probably say this as a joke, but he might understand the truth behind it, or maybe I can make him think this one is his idea. This one I'll just bring up on the set quietly. This one I'll just do without telling him I'm going to do it. And so all this kind of girly, non-threatening ways that I could make sure there wasn't the slightest possibility he would think I was arrogant or had ideas of my own, basically, because my number one goal in life was that everybody liked me. I was never any problem, and so we show up and I meet Susan. She's so impressive, and sit down, and I swear, I think it was on page 1, she said, now, this first line I have, I don't think I should say that. Let's just cut that line. How about that? Or we can put it on page 2, whichever you like. And my mouth was just hanging. I couldn't believe, and it's ridiculous that I would be in my 30s and feel like this, but I'd never seen a woman behave like that before. To just say what she thought without first saying, if you don't mind, maybe you'd like this, or maybe you won't, and just say it. And of course, he reacted completely normally and said, "Oh yeah," or "No, let's do this instead," or whatever. And the entire movie was like that for me. It was just a total lesson in how to be yourself, how to actually, just say things and have an opinion, and that it's okay.
Do you feel like you were afraid to do that when you were younger?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I was very shy, but I think I was shy because I didn't want to volunteer opinions or take a stance. That I'll just be very shy and that's how I'll be able to remain non-threatening and everything. It was definitely a part of my personality for long as my whole life has been an adventure in how to, rise above that and conquer it.
If this is a weird question, don't answer it. But you're like 6 foot tall or so. When you were like a teenager,
yeah.
I don't know when you got to be as tall as you are, but
when I was a baby.
Okay. But when you were like a teenager, were you comfortable in your body, and were you comfortable with the kind of just impact that you made being taller than most of the other women that were around you?
No.
And a lot of the other dudes,
and
too? Most of the other dudes?
All of the women and the vast majority of the dudes I was taller than. No, I wasn't comfortable. I think my fondest wish was to take up less space in the world. And
you understand that's a pretty unusual thing for a professional performer to say.
I know, but I really was self-conscious. I didn't want to try sports because I was afraid of being laughed at, or that that I was sure I must be uncoordinated. I just didn't want to try anything, and I was very, very self-conscious. And then even the few times that I would let myself out of the box or something, somebody would say, "Oh, you laugh too loud. That's very unattractive. You should laugh more quietly." And I'm like, how much more quiet can I get? But that was always the message. Don't wear those shoes. I made a lot of my own clothes. Don't wear clothes like that. Don't just don't be you. And I tried not to.
What kind of clothes did you make?
A lot of things. I just have a very vivid imagination, and I made a lot of crazy stuff. I made things out of leather and suede, and I don't know.
Give me examples, please.
Okay. I one time made, those really, it was like a jumpsuit with really, really wide legs. That was kind of in style when I was in high school. Very, very wide.
Sort of like something Maurice White from Earth, Wind and Fire would wear?
Yes, exactly. And one side was solid green, and one side was had a green background but had polka dots on it. And then, of course, the first thing somebody said was, "You look like a circus clown." And I had to get through the day without going home and changing. But
I'm pretty impressed here. One thing that I'm impressed with is that for a young woman whose stated desire was to be smaller in the world, that you were making circus clown clothing for yourself.
Clown pants, right. Well, I know. It's true.
I want to be clear. Like, I support circus clown clothing. But
it's absolutely true. I don't know. I think I just wasn't good at blending into I really wanted to, but or I was trying to thwart myself unconsciously or something. But I had, I was so tall, but then I had platform shoes. I had great big ones with like a rainbow on them or something. And I remember at a church youth group meeting, the junior pastor asked one of the guys, what kind of girl would you like picture yourself dating. And he said, well, I'm not sure. I just know she wouldn't be wearing those shoes. I made it through high school without having a boyfriend, let's just say.
Did you think of yourself as good looking?
No, really not. But I held out hope because my best friend's mother constantly told me I was pretty and that I would realize that later. And I thought she was crazy, but I had this secret hope that maybe adults will think I am somehow. In this distant future, somehow I'll become attractive.
Were you performing as a teenager?
No, I didn't want to be in the drama club or do. It was kind of a secret. I announced to my parents when I was 3 that I was going to be in movies, but I kept it pretty close to the vest.
It's really hard to get in movies without telling anyone.
It is, but I figured I'd had no clue that you could get in movies without going to college first. And so I figured I'll just study acting in college and then it'll all work out.
So what was the first time you came out as an aspiring performer?
It was the first time I performed, actually.
Yeah, like when did you actually admit to the world that this was what you wanted for yourself?
Well, I was very into music. I was in every chorus and choir, and I played the piano and the flute and the pipe organ. And I took the music teacher in high school aside and said, "Where do you go to college if you want to be an actor?" And he said, "Oh, Boston University." And so that was it. I didn't have to ask anybody else. That's what I wanted to do. And I eventually ended up there.
Not like Juilliard or something.
No, I mean,
no offense to Boston University.
No, but that's what he said.
It's just an unusually specific.
It was extremely specific.
At the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts.
Right.
BU.
Maybe that's what small town music teachers would think of rather than Juilliard.
Was there a point when you were like late in your teens, early in your 20s, when you realized that it was something that you actually could do?
Oh, well, embarrassingly, I was 100% positive the entire time. Absolutely really? Positive. Yeah, that's what I was going to do. I had no backup plan. My parents were unsophisticated enough not to force me to have a backup plan. I mean, we had no clue about anything to do with anything like this. My parents were from Vermont, very small town, grow your own food, build your own house kind of people. And when I said I want to major in acting at BU, they were like, "Oh, okay." As if I'd said something you could get a job in, And then when I eventually did get a job, my first job was in Tootsie. It was my first audition, even. I remember I came home to visit, and my mom and the neighbor were talking. My best friend's mother were talking, and she was saying, "We can't believe it. Nobody can believe it. This is crazy." And my mom said, "But she studied acting in college." So we were kind of like, yeah, well, that was what was supposed to happen.
Why don't we listen to a scene, you, my guest Geena Davis, in Tootsie from 1982. So Dustin Hoffman's character has just been cast on a soap opera. He auditioned as a woman, and he meets April, one of the other actors on the show, played by my guest Geena Davis. And Dustin's character speaks first. He's a bit flustered by April walking into the dressing room in her underwear.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, it's quite all right.
I'm April Page. How you
Well,
doing? You okay?
my, what a nice-looking table.
Really?
Yes, it's very smooth. And that's a very good idea, a socket for a plug.
Yeah, well, we get everything.
Yes, I see.
Oh, just push all that stuff out of the way. Make yourself at home,
Thank
okay?
Dum-de-dum-de-dum. Yes,
One more thing, Miss Michaels. I forgot to give you these.
thank you. Oh, are these for today?
Yes. They always throw stuff into the last minute. You could lose your mind around here.
Oh, my goodness.
What's wrong?
I have to kiss Dr. Brewster.
Oh, yeah. He kisses all the women on the show. We call him the tongue.
When you got to the movie,
Yeah.
I think that's the expression they use, did you feel like you could do it?
I did. I was a little nervous coming in. I didn't know. I'd never, obviously been on a set. I thought they would expect me to know where to stand or how, what to do. But I was pretty confident. Yeah. In fact, we shot that the first thing on my first day, and while we were shooting, the take they used is where Dustin accidentally walked into the door, but we just kept going, and I ad-libbed something or whatever. And after that, Sidney Pollack said, "Come over here. Why are you not nervous?" I said, "Oh, am I? Well, I don't know. I just not." And he's like, "It's very strange, but it's great. But it's very strange that you're not nervous." But I'm just, I've never had nerves about it.
Did you feel by then like your appearance was not going to embarrass you?
Well, I had gone through a whole period before that for a couple of years as a model because I didn't know, nobody said at BU how you're supposed to get a job in the movies. And I went to New York instead of L.A. because nobody told me you should go to L.A. instead. So my big plan was I'll become a model, and then they'll just offer me parts, like Christy Brinkley was getting parts and stuff. Because, of course, it's much easier to become a supermodel than an actor. So
Sure.
I didn't, but I did work. I did, catalogs, and I was on the cover of New Jersey Monthly and
Congratulations.
things like that. Yes,
I heard you were something called a living mannequin. Is that true?
I was. I pretended to be a mannequin in store windows.
Where, please explain that.
Okay. So I was working at Ann Taylor on Fifth Avenue and as a sales girl, and we always dressed in the clothes of the store. And one day there were mannequins sitting at a table eating plastic lunch in the clothes, and there was one empty chair, and I said, "Dare me to go in the window," to the other girls. And I didn't need them to dare me. I just decided to go in the window and then just freeze. And people stopped to see what I was going to do, and then I just didn't move. I'd never thought about whether I had an ability with motionlessness or not, but I just sat there and didn't move. And more people kept gathering and couldn't figure out, because they hadn't seen me walk in, they couldn't figure out what they were looking at. And the other people were like, just wait. And then maybe after 5 or 10 minutes, I moved. And what? And then more people gathered. Anyway, the manager came and said, "Geena, get out of the window. What are you doing?" And then she saw the big crowd, and she said, "No, stay in the window." And so they hired me from then on to be in the window on the weekends, and then other stores did too. But anyway, modeling plan. Yes. Oh, because you asked me about did I decide that I was attractive.
Yeah.
So what I decided was, because I was getting, $200 an hour back in the day, was unbelievable to be a model. And I decided that I knew how to trick people into thinking I was attractive. So I had decided that I was attractive, but that it was a trick.
I mean, here in the radio industry, we're known for our good looks.
Absolutely.
But less so than in, movie stars.
Right.
So it's really interesting to me, just this kind of like, what's it like, basically. And I feel like it would be weird if your identity was tied up in how good looking you are. But at the same time, I think in any profession where you are looked at as part of your job, especially if you're a woman, where you're looked at as part of your gender, it is, it must be very difficult to maintain some distance between what you have done by choice and what has been given to you by nature, and the weird, gross, dark stuff about people looking at you.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. And so that's the best I could do, too. I'm a professional. I've been doing this 15 years.
I'm not sure what to say. I'm not sure I even I'm sorry.
There may not have been a question. But I mean, it sounds like partly what you were looking for was a way to have an identity that included your own agency, that you were doing something.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about that.
Is that possible? Is
That's
that true?
possible. Yeah.
Should I check with your therapist?
No, but I will be. That's really interesting, huh? It's possible. It's possible.
Did you like being a movie star?
Here's what I think about that, about being recognized and everything. It's for me, it's never been at a level that's uncomfortable, where I'd have to actually leave somewhere or avoid something because of being noticed. I go to restaurants, I go to the movies, I do anything I want, and always have. And if people recognize me, they say something nice, 99% of the time. And they just want to say, I like you, or I like your work, or whatever. And this is a very nice thing. And a lot of times it's a very positive thing. I might be in a line and the person before me gets treated rudely, and then all of a sudden I'm treated really nice. So I try to be very grateful that I get the good version of people most of the time.
It seems like you've also had some of your landmark works, Thelma and Louise, A League of Their Own, Tootsie. Those are all movies that, in addition to being great movies, are movies that really impacted people's lives and identities in a way that I don't know maybe Titanic didn't do as much. Like I have a friend who's she's probably 30-ish and plays baseball, and I don't think that there's like a more important thing in the world to her than A League of Their Own. So it must be that I presume that when you interact with people often, that's an element of it, that you've been in these things that ended up being important to people.
Mm-hmm. It's a very special thing. I'm so grateful that I was played some roles that meant something to people. It was a huge change when people started recognizing me from Thelma and Louise. Like, we had no idea anybody was going to react the way they did. No clue. And total surprise. And so before, people might say, hey, the Beetlejuice, The Fly, whatever. This is my bug phase. But
two great movies.
Great movies, right? But when people recognized me from that movie, they wanted to talk about it. They had passionate ideas and feelings about it. And then League of Their Own, it was young women or girls saying, I play sports because of that movie. And who knew that movies were going to live as long as they do now? Thelma and Louise is 25 this year, and League of Their Own will be 25 next year. But I have the same number of women come up to me and say they play sports because of League of Their Own as when it first came out. So
you yourself took up sports as an adult.
Yes.
What were the circumstances?
I was a very late blooming athlete. Yeah. So like I said, I was very physically shy as a kid, and then I got cast in League of Their Own, and I had to play the best baseball player anyone has ever seen. And so we had coaches, very major league coaches, very professional people, and I trained, as hard as I could, tried as hard as I could, and they soon started saying, "Wow, you have natural athletic ability," and I was like, "I do." It was so exciting, and I learned how to play really good movie baseball, and then I had other parts where I learned special skills also, like Cutthroat Island and Long Kiss Goodnight. I learned sword fighting and pistol shooting and ice skating and taekwondo and all kinds of stuff, and I was good at all of those too. And so that's what made me think I want to take up a sport in real life and not just the movie version of it.
What was it like for you when you started trying to do that?
Well, embarrassingly, my coach says this is true. I don't remember this, but when I took it up at 41 at the first lesson, he says I asked, how old is too old to go to the Olympics at archery? Before I had shot the thing. So that's, I go too far with everything. But I picked it up pretty quickly, yeah. I mean, it was between when I took it up and was a semifinalist for the Olympic team was 2.5 years. So I picked it up pretty quick.
I mean, it took me 5 years.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Twice
as long.
Yeah.
I just I didn't have your natural talent. As as someone who you've described yourself as someone who wants everyone to like you, or wanted everyone to like you, were you able to quiet the kind of natural self-criticism?
That's a very insightful question, because that is a huge part of it. Soon after I started, I had an excellent coach, Don Rabska, and soon into the training, I'd shoot and he'd say suddenly, "What were you just thinking?" And I'd have to think, and I'd say, I was thinking I suck. And then another time he'd ask me, and I'd say, I was thinking you think I suck. And I realized that I hadn't really been aware of my self-talk until then, and I became hyper-aware and realized that I was just constantly putting myself down every minute. And not only just in archery, but all day long, everywhere. And so I really tried to conquer it, and every time I just become aware when particularly in archery, obviously first, if I was thinking, oh, that sucked, I suck, I think, no, it didn't. I'm doing the best I can. I'll be better tomorrow. I'm doing the best I can. And it bled over into my real life, too, because it was so overwhelming, the amount of negative self-talk that I had going on. It was like having an unnecessary person beating me up all day, And I know that everybody, has some degree of problem with this, but it really changed my life because the intense degree that I had, this inner critic going on.
Do you feel like the way that change in your life, that you left, you didn't act very much for a while, you went and semi-qualified for the Olympics in archery, and it had this pretty profound impact on the way that you lived your life.
Right.
When you were a full-on grown-up.
Right. That's true.
You'd been married several times before, but you a lasting marriage with children in your personal life and in your professional life. This commitment to, to doing this hard work to make this industry better.
Well, it definitely has impacted everything in a positive way. It's just made me so much more confident. Like working with Susan Sarandon and having her be a role model, had a huge impact on me. It all just made me feel like it's okay to be me. It's okay to take up space in the world. I feel comfortable speaking up and doing things that I think are important. So yeah, I think it had a big impact. Also, archery afforded me an opportunity to experience success that was measurable rather than subjective, which everything is in this industry. But it was suddenly like, oh, it doesn't matter what I look like while I'm doing it or what I'm wearing. It's only the points. And I had never done something except schoolwork, that was measured in numbers. And I loved that about it. I really, really liked that about it.
Well, I mean, you say, I think even above and beyond the part about it being objective rather than subjective, generally, I think that the experience of subjectivity for an actress is very different than it is for an actor, but for many other people, a visual artist or something like that, whose work is seen because of sexism, because so much of the work is tied up in, in a sexist system and the male gaze.
Right. Absolutely.
Do you feel like the work that you're doing now is changing things?
Yes, I do. I'm very optimistic. Despite...
You're very optimistic based on experience, or very optimistic by nature?
No, well, I think by nature too, but no, I can be very, I can look at things very clinically, but based on the experiences that we've had and the response that we've gotten, I'm very optimistic that no matter how intractable this problem has been and how invisible it's been, profoundly invisible, it's now getting noticed, and that people are willing to make changes. And so finally, I do believe that very soon we'll get momentum going as far as on-screen portrayals. I can't promise that we're going to have momentum behind the scenes anytime soon. That's a much tougher nut to crack, in the directing and writing and producing.
When you go and talk to good-hearted, well-meaning people who agree that it's a problem and are surprised at the extent to which it's a problem, what do you ask them to change or suggest that they change specifically? Like, what are the actions that you would have them take?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because it's very specifically not, please make more movies starring a female character. I think if that was my goal, it would be very hard. It would be a very hard slog, because you've probably run into this, the concept that women will watch men, but men won't watch women, so it's not our fault. We have to make everybody male in the lead characters. And no matter how many movies starring women come out that are successes, we never seem to get momentum going. I think it's because there's this just fear that that's true, and so we can't do that, and those movies must be a one-off. So I don't say that. What I say is, whatever you're going to make, whatever you're already going to make, I'm not saying add a message, do anything different. Whatever you're already making, before you cast it, go through and change a bunch of first names to female and add some diversity in there too. And wherever it says a crowd gathers, put comma, which is half female. And there you have it. You've got a gender-balanced script probably. It might be more interesting now that some of the characters have had a gender swap, because they won't be stereotyped, clearly, if they were meant to be a man. And it's easy and it's fun, simple. Ultimately, we want writers to write parts for women, and it's great when they do write incredible, well-drawn characters for women, but it doesn't happen anywhere near enough, and it'd be simple enough in so many, many cases. There's very few characters that couldn't be either a man or a woman.
Well, Geena Davis, I'm so grateful that you came in to talk to us today. What a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. The other thing I say to them is figure out what part I'm going to play. Because I like to work.
Geena Davis founded the Geena Davis Institute on Gender in Media, and she's also founded the Bentonville Film Festival in Arkansas, a film festival dedicated to promoting gender equality and diversity in film, which is one of, if not the only, film festival in the world that guarantees distribution to its winners.
It is. It's the only one. Yeah, you get theatrical, TV, digital, and DVD release.
The whole 9 yards, in other words.
All of it, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Geena Davis from 2016. Her work at the Geena Davis Institute on Gender in Media is still going strong. You can also see her on the new season of Grey's Anatomy on ABC.